This was work.
And you know, we do have sun here in Clover, so you could sit out on that deck and
We do, I know. We don't have a pool though.
Yeah. Kiddie pool.
I can bring the one I had for my dogs. It's up above in the garage. I could bring that over. You could stand in there.
We did have one of those summer days when it was really hot a few years back. Might have been the year of COVID. I don't remember. But anyway, I remember Frank Wesley came over and brought us a bottle of wine, actually. But we were sitting out in the driveway, and it wasn't like a slip and slide, but somehow we jerry-rigged together. We took the hose and something we sat on and just sort of pretended we were on the beach. Might look weird to people driving by. All right, well, it's time. We are live. We're on lesson 6, Approaching the King. People in positions of authority can be rather unapproachable. Some people used to say that about their pastors back in the day. That when you were a kid growing up, and you don't just go talk to pastor.
No.
Either you're in trouble or he summons you, type thing.
Right. Saw him on Sunday in the suit, and that was it.
You don't knock on the door and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Right? Which is sad. It's sad that it ever got to that point where a pastor became such an authority figure where kids were afraid to even talk to him. But anyway, hopefully that's not too much of the case anymore. Sometimes we experience an irrational fear of authority figures. Sometimes we project bad traits upon them, whether or not they deserve it. In the case of Esther and King Xerxes, that is not the situation. Esther has learned her people have been singled out for annihilation by the Grand Vizier, and that's just a word for like a Persian important guy in the Persian kingdom. Not the king, but kind of close up there, right? Important guy in the government. Haman, because of Haman's pride, anger, and ancestry. Mordecai has convinced Esther that even she is not safe, though she lives in the palace and is the queen of the empire. Remember, what did we say about kings and queens back then? How is it maybe different than you think of a marriage today? Just because you're king and queen.
If he asked her to show up.
It's not like you sleep in the same bed unless he wants you to. It's not like you live in the same quarters unless he calls you to come. So the queen had her quarters with her maidservants, and the king does the king thing. And if I want the queen to come tonight, I will summon her to come. And if he just waltzes in, I can choose to off with her head if I choose. So not a relationship you think of as a husband and wife today. Still, Esther is reluctant to intercede with her husband, the king, and I think I would be too. Now, if you go back to Esther 4, 9 through 11, someone want to read that? Esther 4, 9 through 11. Okay, Jan?
So Hathach went and told Esther what Mordecai had said. Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him directions to pass on to Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that it is the law that any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned will be put to death, unless the king holds out the golden scepter to him. Then he will live. But I have not been called to go to the king for 30 days.
Yeah, she hasn't seen her husband in over a month, right? So that kind of shows you the situation there.
Already?
Maybe some wives will be okay with that. Not even the queen was allowed to approach King Xerxes without his consent. For those who live in a democracy where officials must first be elected and then re-elected to keep their jobs, this is kind of hard to imagine. But Xerxes needed no one's favor. He was king of nearly the entire known world at the time. There was no upcoming election, and he hadn't arrived on the throne by consent of the people in the first place. He is the king whether you like it or not. What's more, Xerxes had proven that he was not someone you wanted to anger. Remember the very first chapter, how she came to be queen. Vashti was summoned and she decided not to come. And Xerxes said, okay, well, you're not queen anymore, and we'll just find someone to replace you. She had probably also heard how Xerxes dealt with the builders of the pontoon bridge for his invasion of Greece. We talked about that real briefly at the beginning. Basically, they were invading Greece. A pontoon bridge was just a bunch of boats they would put together, kind of. You don't have a bridge. A quick way to build a bridge is boat, right? And you can maybe put something over the top of all the boats to get you from point A to point B across the water. Well, the seas got a little wild and the bridge failed, and he got mad, not only at the engineers of the bridge, and he had them decapitated, but he got mad. This is kind of weird. Herodotus, a Greek historian, says he got angry at the sea And he had people whip the sea as if that was going to do anything.
Yeah.
And then they threw chains into the sea, like as a way to punish it, to keep it from, when waves, like, okay, we'll just chain down the waves. So it just doesn't even make sense. But that's kind of how irrational and just, I'm mad and I'm going to do something about it, right? So I want you to whip that sea, I want you to chain it up, and I want you to behead the people who built that bridge, built that pontoon bridge. So this is the kind of man you're dealing with, okay? Not exactly the nicest of people, and maybe a little crazy. So who would dare cross a man who had the sea itself lashed and branded? And we're going to see a little bit more of his anger in later chapters. Suffice it to say, Esther was well aware of the danger of approaching the king unbidden. Yet Mordecai, remember that's her older cousin, convinced her to do just that. Okay, back to 15 and 16 of chapter 4. Let's review that. What did Esther request of Mordecai to prepare for this event? Rhonda, you got that?
Esther responded to Mordecai, "Go, gather all the Jews who are found in Susa. Fast on my behalf. Do not eat and drink for 3 days and nights. I and my young women will also fast in the same way. After that I will go to the king, contrary to the law, and then I will perish. I perish."
If I perish, I perish. Yeah, so kind of, and fasting and praying often went together in the Jewish culture, so you assume they probably were praying as well. That's what you do during a fast. So you have a lot of time to think, right? And a lot of time to talk to God. So 3 days, get everyone together. We can band together, get our prayers up there to God, and if I perish, I perish. But the famous words of last week from Mordecai were, perhaps this is why you're here, right? For a time such as this. Maybe this is why, and that's been kind of the theme of the book, how God uses things, and he has the puzzle pieces in his order, in his way, even though they may seem weird to us. God's will be done through however he chooses to accomplish it. And Mordecai says, maybe that's why you are here at this time in this place, because of what's going on right now. So keeping that in mind, Esther says, all right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna go. And if I die, I die. John 3:14 and Matthew 16:21. Contrast and compare Esther's situation with that of Jesus. A little bit of similarity, obviously a little bit different as well, but John 3:14 and Matthew 16:21.
I've got the Matthew one.
All right, what's that one say?
From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life.
This is how it has to be. I must. Always makes you kind of chuckle how the disciples, how do you not get this when it actually happens? I have told you multiple times, I must do this. And yet when it happens, they still, what are you doing? I told you, I must do this. And then John 3:14, right before John 3:16. You got that again, Randy? Go ahead.
Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
Okay. So in what way is that kind of similar to Esther's situation, would you say? What was Esther kind of risking?
For life.
Yeah, I mean, in the same way, Esther, now the difference is what? Esther, this might work out, it might not for Esther, we'll kind of see. I'm risking my life. It may end well, it may not end well, and I'm ready for either way. Jesus knew it wasn't going to end well for him. Well, that's maybe a bad way to put it.
Yeah.
It ends well, but it's going to be a tough road. Before it ends well, he's going to have to go through what he goes through. There wasn't an option for Jesus, which makes it all the more, and I've said this before, I think as every year goes by, the mystery of that prayer on Maundy, Thursday, Father, if there's any other way, take this cup from me. I must go suffer. This is not like, maybe there's 2-3 options here. He tells them straight out, this is exactly how it has to go. I'm going to be handed over, crucified, rise. He knows the whole thing. On Thursday, to say, if there's any other way, I think you start to stick your finger in the temperature of the water, how horrible he knew tomorrow was going to be. If even he, who knows there is no other way, says, if there's another, and he obviously isn't sinning, but it's kind of like boy, this is going to be bad. And that's just a mystery to me how, well, Jesus, you know, you can't get a way out of this. Thoughts on that? And not that that's part of the thing, but just, I remember as a kid hearing that, well, Jesus is just kind of saying,
But is that the humanity of
I
him?
think, so, yeah, I mean, it's his true man saying,
Yeah.
ooh.
There's still that, like weeping at Lazarus' grave. He's still human in that,
Yeah,
and maybe it's to show us that even though you know that Jesus is your Savior and you're going to be in heaven, you still are going to have moments when that doubt is there or you're questioning or. So he did it, so, I don't know.
no, yeah.
Thought,
Yeah, and the sweat was like drops of blood thing. I just think I have never had that. And I thought there was like a scientific term for it. I forget, hema something but I also have never had to think about tomorrow I have to suffer hell. And here's what it's going to be like because I made hell, and I know exactly what it's going to be like because I created it for the devil and his wicked angels. Maybe you start to kind of appreciate how, boy, he was suffering already that night. And then he goes back to the disciple, could you not keep watching? An hour? Guy, you're asleep? I just went through that. And I just asked you to stay awake for an hour in prayer. I didn't ask you for much. And here you are again, 3 times falling asleep on me. Do you have any idea what I'm about to do for you? But he doesn't get mad, or he just kind of like, rise and go, here comes my betrayer. Here we go, off we go. Amazing. Okay, so similar in the sense that they're kind of called on to risk death for their people, but not similar in the sense that Jesus doesn't have an option. Esther, we're going to see it's going to work out okay for her. All right, now we get into chapter 5. Chapter 5 begins with another chronological indicator on the 3rd day. So just what we said, in accordance with the request of Mordecai, the Jewish people had been fasting and they had been praying for Esther's successful intercession for 3 days and nights. Now came the moment of truth. Must have been an incredibly terrifying moment for Esther. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal robes. No, we can look at the text here. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in the queen's royal clothing and stood in the inner court of the king's palace opposite the quarters of the king. The king was sitting on the throne in the reception hall opposite the entrance. And when the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court. Now I'll read the second half of that verse through verse 4. So you picture Esther getting ready, and I'm sure she had a lot of servants helping her get ready, and she trembling as she imagined her heartbeat. And she was sweating a little bit. I could, in like an hour, I could be dead. And I'm going to get all pretty and get my makeup on and get my clothes on and get all dolled up. And he could easily just say, get her out of here and put her on this pole outside. Now read second of verse 2 through verse 4.
Oh, boy.
Something like that? Lynn Hermanson got that? You can just start at verse 2 through 4. Chapter 5. No, I'm sorry. You made eye contact. I thought that was an eager, please let me read. I'm afraid to raise my hand, but please.
He sees things.
It's okay. I don't mean to put pressure on you.
I had it and then I lost it again. Where?
5:2.
2 through 4, chapter 5. Yeah.
Okay. She pleased him. The king held out to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand. Esther approached and touched the head of the scepter. The king said to her, "What concerns you, Queen Esther? Whatever you are seeking at the top of the kingdom will be given to you." Esther said, "If it is agreeable to the king, the queen and Haman should come to the banquet that I have paid for."
Okay. So, the powerful and often angry Xerxes, how does he respond to her unbidden approach?
Lovingly.
What a relief that must have been, right? Okay, step 1 is done. Right, okay, I live to see another day here. Yeah, at this point in the narrative now, notice power and control are being transferred. Again, this is if you don't see God working in this, or God, here, the king of Persia offers to his queen anything, even up to half his kingdom. And unlike Herod with the whole John the Baptist story, Herod said, remember that story where the daughter comes to dance and the mom said, get the head of John the Baptist, and Herod says, on that day, I'll offer you up to half the kingdom. Well, Herod had no right to give anyone anything. He was a Roman puppet king. The Romans had him there, but the Romans owned the place. It wasn't like Herod could give anything away. But they had drank a lot that day, and Herod was just saying stuff. Xerxes actually could. Xerxes in a lot different position than Herod was in that story. So he offers her even up to half his kingdom. Interesting. Now this kind of crazy guy, God puts it in his heart to be pleased with us. This again could have gone exactly the opposite way, but rather than responding immediately and pleading for the lives of her people, Esther's approach is what? What does she say? She could have just got on her knees and said, "Oh, king, here's the problem, here's the situation, please save us." She has a strategy here. What is her request? Verse 4,
Banquet.
I would like to have a banquet, right? So you got to think she's kind of been thinking about this. How do I want to go about, I know the goal I want to get to, but how am I going to get from point A to point B to get to that goal to solve this Haman problem and save the people? Verse 5, or excuse me, right before that, the reversal has begun. By her request, Esther becomes the one in charge. Unlike in chapter 1 where Vashti was commanded to appear at the king's banquet, now Esther has asked the king to appear at hers. Kind of an interesting juxtaposition there. And the king is not the only one invited. Esther has cleverly asked the king to bring along our villain, Haman, the one who had plotted to have her and her people killed. The tables are beginning to shift in our soap opera here. The king said in verse 5, "Hurry, get Haman so that we can do what Esther has said." So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Okay, the winds are starting to blow a little different direction here. I'm just going to keep going unless there's anything up to that point. But this isn't real rocket science. Rather than reacting in deadly anger as one might expect, Xerxes acquiesces to Esther's request and even commands Haman to be brought at once to attend Esther's banquet. After the banquet, while they're drinking wine, which could be a dangerous time to ask Xerxes for anything, considering what we know of him, Xerxes again implores Esther to make a request, and again offering up to half his kingdom. 6 through 8, who has that? Wendy's got that.
While the king was drinking wine, he said to Esther, "What is your request? It will be given to you. What are you seeking? Up to half of the kingdom, it's yours." Esther answered, "This is my request. This is what I seek. If I have found favor in the eyes of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my request, let the king and Haman come to a banquet which I will make for them tomorrow. Then I will give the answers requested by the king."
Okay. So the response, and why do you think she responds as she does? And I'll tell you that second question, I don't think we can come up with a perfect answer, but just in your opinion, why do you think she responds as she does? The response is easy. What's her response?
I'll tell you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll tell you tomorrow,
Okay.
basically. Why do you think she responds as she does?
Because then they'll both be there.
Okay.
Haman and.
Yeah.
Right, now, at this point, it's just Xerxes that's just talking.
And Haman doesn't need to be there, though, does he? I mean, Xerxes is the one who has the power here.
Right.
But yeah,
But
Depends on what's her goal.
yeah.
yeah.
He needs to be there because I don't know the end of the story here yet, but I'm wondering.
You're starting to sniff at what's going
He's
to
the
happen.
one she wants him to, the king to know what this guy's doing.
Smoke out the problem here, yeah. I want him to be there when this happens. Yeah, if you know the end of the story, and when we get there, you'll see, oh, okay. Going down to there, you see exactly what she's kind of building and building and building. I want it to be this dramatic moment when
Yeah.
that's the guy. You think this is the problem? That's your problem right there. So she definitely has She definitely has a strategy, you can't not think that she's had 3 days to think about this right now. What if he says this? What if he says I should do that? I know how my mind works when I kind of have an unknown situation. Try to play out every scenario in your head.
Yeah.
If he says this, then I'll do that. If he does that, then I'll do this. And I think this is her plan where at the end of the day, I got to get Xerxes in a room and Haman in a room, and I got to show him that Haman's the problem, not my cousin. And the Jews aren't the problem. It's this guy that's the problem. So, God's hand again at work. Okay. With Esther's second invitation, our suspense is elevated to a new height. Xerxes plays along, perhaps enjoying what he takes to be the coyness of his queen. Kind of an interesting thought. Like, oh, I am kind of intrigued. Okay, he could have just said, tell me now, or die. I'll play along. I'll wait till tomorrow. I'm kind of interested where this is all going to go. And Haman is delighted as well. If nothing else, the pause between Esther's first and second banquet allows us to pause and become more familiar with Haman the villain. It also prepares the way for the greatest reversal of the book. Read 9 through 14. Haman, get a little behind the scenes on him again. 9 through 14. Rondi's got, or Roger, either one. Roger then, okay.
No, excuse me, that was wrong. Haman went out that day full of joy with a happy heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai at the king's gate, and Mordecai did not stand and tremble before him, Haman was filled with rage against Mordecai. But Haman restrained himself from any action.
That's what got Mordecai into trouble in the first place. Keep going.
He went to his house and called together his friends and his wife Zeresh. Haman reviewed for them the glory of his wealth, the number of his sons, all the details of how the king had made him great, and how the king had elevated him over all the officials and the king's administrators. Haman said, "What's more, Queen Esther did not invite anyone except me to come with the king to the banquet that she prepared. I have been invited again for her banquet with the king tomorrow. But none of this means anything to me whenever I see Mordecai the Jew, sitting at the king's gate." Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends said to him, "Make a gallows 75 feet high. In the morning, tell the king that Mordecai should be hanged on it. Then go happily with the king to the banquet." In Haman's opinion, this was good advice, so he had the gallows made.
Okay. Yeah. Well. So, leaves the banquet pretty happy, but sees Mordecai again, and we're back to square one. But this time he controls his anger a little bit. Right? This time he doesn't remember. First time he kind of lashes out, and he restrains himself, goes home, gets his friends together, gets his wife in on the conversation, talks about how awesome he is. Look at all the glory I have, and how great I am, and what the king has done, and I'm better than all these other people in the kingdom. And I got invited to the royal banquet. Again, that just proves how great and awesome I am. That the queen just wants me and the king there. How neat. I am part of the inner circle. But Mordecai, that guy really gets me mad every time. So he has everything in the world, but that one guy who won't bow down to me. And that's going to end up being his downfall. Right? If he would have just let well enough alone, but that anger toward this one situation is what's going to end up getting him killed at the end. The solution? Well, let's just kill him. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole...
But the wife came up with that idea.
Yeah, the wife came up with the idea.
That was interesting.
Like, why don't we just get rid of the problem right away? Why are we waiting? We got to wait a year and kill him tomorrow. Kind of, what's the story? Widow of Zarephath. No, not Widow of Zarephath. Naboth's vineyard. Remember that story where Ahab Naboth has this vineyard. And I see it every day and I'm so jealous. And he mopes around the house. I wish I had Naboth's vineyard. Jezebel says, "You're the king, for crying out loud. Put on some pants and get in the vineyard. What's Naboth gonna do to you?
Big boy pants, yeah.
Have a big party and put up some false charges against Naboth and have him killed and go get the vineyard. It's not that hard."
Wife had all the good
How
ideas,
wicked Jezebel
huh?
was, but I think that's one story we see. Jezebel's horrible, right? Just kill the guy. It's not a big deal. And then remember how it happens, and Elijah comes and says, "I can't believe you did this, and someday it's going to be your blood that flows, not Naboth's." But long story short, kind of the same thing here. The wife just says, and how often that happens, where sometimes the wife is, "Just go do it. Why are you crying to me about it?" Oftentimes our wives are the ones who just say, "Not that complicated.
Just do it."
Just do it," right? How God puts people in our life that help us, compliment us, I guess is the word. Now, this is an evil thing, obviously, but as it was with Naboth's vineyard. But why are you complaining? You're the king, or you're the servant of the king. Anyway, then the thing about the gallows, just you just notice in the footnote, if you got the EHV, could be just like probably more of a stake or a pole. A 75-foot high gallows would be kind of high, tall. When we think of a gallows, we think of like a noose and a hangman, right? But probably the word is more of a giant pole. And, like a shish kebab almost, right? Stick them on the pole and raise the pole up in the air, and there's Mordecai. Yeah. Not nice people back in those days, right? There was no Geneva Convention, and there was no cruel and unusual punishment clause in the Constitution or Declaration of Independence or whatever it was.
Yeah, but they even get him up there to impale him.
Right, yeah, it makes me, I wonder if you kind of stuck him in there on the ground and then but 75 feet, just
imagine, yeah.
I don't know how heavy Mordecai was, but like, how many guys I suppose maybe they had some kind of a pulley system where you could, a rope and sort of crank him up there, but I mean, what's 75 feet high? A basket, that's 10.
Why does it
10
have to
and a half of those.
Why
That's-
does it have to be 70?
So everybody could see him.
Ooh,
Yeah,
the whole.
we don't want to just, we're going to do everything flashy, right? Yeah, you can see 75 feet high, you can see from a ways away. That's a good sized structure.
Oh, it's a cell tower. Ooh.
Yeah, there you go. Put Mordecai on top of the cell tower. Here's what happens if you don't bow down to Haman. Okay,
Can't wait to get to the end and see
you're
what
so
happens to
excited.
Haman.
I'm impressed you haven't read ahead of time. You're waiting.
Well, I was starting to, but then the conversation was getting good
Yeah,
too, so I
so-
can't read ahead. And so I had to pay attention.
No spoilers. Don't ruin it for yourself. Study God's word, except for this. Wait till tomorrow.
Oh, no,
don't wanna
next
know
Sunday,
the story.
next Sunday we'll know the end.
Yeah. You can kind of guess where it's going to go, but throughout the study we've described Xerxes as the king of kings. That was a Persian term meaning emperor. And he certainly was powerful, and his anger was to be feared from an earthly perspective. But he was only a man. For all his wealth and power, he still is nothing more than that. And how many scriptures talk about, don't put your trust in princes who can't save. Don't put your trust in kings. They may seem at the time like they're everything, but at the end of the day, nations will rise and nations will fall. There is a king above all kings, a king who is all powerful, whose power and anger truly must be feared. Heard about that a little bit in Isaiah today, 66. The day will come where the nations gather and you will see those who disobeyed the king, and it's not going to be a pretty sight. Some other sections, Psalm 2, Psalm 18, and Isaiah 13. Psalm 2, 1 through 12. Start with that.
I've got two.
All right, famous messianic psalm.
Oh, good music. Why do the nations conspire and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, they say, and throw off their fetters. The one enthroned in heaven laughs. The Lord scoffs at them. Then he rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, I have installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. I will proclaim the decree of the Lord. He said to me, You are my son. Today I have become your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession. You will rule them with an iron scepter. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. Therefore, you kings, be wise. Be warned, you rulers of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you be destroyed in your way, for his wrath can flare up in a moment. Blessed are all who take refuge in him.
Thank you. A lot of good stuff in there. We talked about that whole today I've begotten you, today I've become your father when we looked at the Nicene Creed. We all have somewhere along the line studied world history. Maybe for some of you that's been a long time since you studied that, but you remember as much to think about. You went through the different kind of ages in world history and you had, okay, ancient Near East and the Mesopotamians and the Sumerians, and then you have like the Egyptians, and then you had the Assyrians and the Israelites in there for a little bit, then the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans, and how every one of those empires, beautiful, right? Beautiful. Here's what it might have looked like, the hanging gardens in Babylon, and what Rome would have looked like back in the day. And then I just always wonder as you read through those. But the day came where what happened? As beautiful as it was and as powerful as they were, Rome fell, Greek was thrown, you know, every one of them had, and now they had this. And just, time like an ever-rolling stream soon bears us all away. Who knows when the day will come? Nothing's guaranteed. Our country's been around, what, 250 or 300 years? The top of the world, I think we can say. The United States and our economy, and they're going to last forever. Don't put too much trust in it. I just kind of wonder when those people who were in those empires, especially at the top of the empires, as things were falling, Nazi Germany, right, as Hitler was in the bunker and as things were crumbling around him, what does it all matter now? You thought you were the Führer, you thought you were the king of the world, you thought you could, and now you got a gun in your mouth, and it doesn't matter. Without the Lord, none of it matters. And isn't that kind of the point of this psalm? You can think you're all that, but at the end, there's only one King of Kings. And kiss him, or the day will come where he's going to get angry, and he will be destroyed in his wrath. Got any thoughts on that? Comments? So that's why I don't let myself get too caught up in politics, I guess. Certainly, it's important to think about those things and vote and all that, but I don't lose too much sleep when, at the end, God's in control. Psalm 2 is very clear. The Lord decides what the Lord's going to decide. And his will is always best, so whatever happens, happens. Let myself get too worked up about it. How about the next one? Psalm 18, 6 through 19. All right, Lynn.
In my distress I called to the Lord. To my God I cried out. He heard my voice from his temple. My cry came before him. It reached his ears. Then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains trembled. They shook because the Lord was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils and flame from his mouth devoured. Coals were set on fire by it. He tore open the heavens and came down. A dark cloud was under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and he flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made the darkness around him his hiding place. Dark rain clouds surrounded him like a canopy. Emerging from the brightness and rushing through these clouds passed by with rain and coals of fire. And the Lord thundered in the heavens. The Most High raised his voice with hail and coals of fire. When he shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. He shot great lightning bolts and melted them. When the sources of water were revealed and the foundations of the world were uncovered by your rebuke, O Lord, by the breath of wind from your nostrils. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. Because they were too strong for me, he rescued me from my powerful enemy, from those who hate me. He confronted me on the day of my disaster, but the Lord supported me. He brought me out into a wide open space. He rescued me because he delighted in me.
Okay, so King David writing this psalm. We always wonder what this would have sounded like when they sang it. What was his musical notation? What kind of instruments were used? But notice in the little footnote, what does it say there under probably italics or underneath Psalm 18? What was going on that he wrote this? Go ahead, read it out loud.
For the director of music, David, the servant of the Lord. He He sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul.
Okay, you remember that story, before he became king, Saul wasn't a big fan. And Saul was out to get him, and multiple times David spared his life when David could have killed him, but David said, that's not for me to do right now. God will decide when I become king. But so after one of those events, when David felt kind of free, he writes this song. The language here is just so powerful. On our way to Madison last week, I don't know what kind of, is that probably out of, what's Fort McCoy, is that down there? You get all the military jets and things. You get them up here every once in a while. You hear the sonic booms, and they're doing their exercises up there. And those sonic booms are crazy. When you hear them, is that right? They always make me kind of, it's hard to skip a beat a little bit, yeah. But so anyway, there was some jets flying over and above down there. The noise and that is just a little bit. And then you read this, like the power of the Lord, and the smoke from his nostrils, and the thunder, and the darkness, and the wings of the wind, and the dark clouds. And David remembers who's on his side. And at the end of the day, who has his back. And, King Saul, I'm not worried about. My enemies, I'm not worried about. When I have him on my side, he will draw me out. He will save me. He will rescue me. I'm sure that gave David great confidence. So the other thing I wonder when I think of this, did David get a little glimpse into the spiritual world before he wrote this? Did he get to see, like Elisha with his servant, Lord, open his eyes so he can see how many are for us rather than against us? And he looks out and he sees all the angels around the camp. Or is this just David's, obviously a talented writer, talented musician, was this just his way of talking about God, right? God is greater than the thunder, and he's more mighty than the ocean. I guess I don't know the answer to that, but maybe it's a little bit of both. One more. Now we are in Isaiah 13. We can maybe split this into a few. How about we'll start with 1 through 8.
I can do that.
Okay.
The oracle about Babylon, which Isaiah son of Amos saw, raise a banner on a bare hill, shout to them, signal to them to enter the gates of the nobles. I have given a command to my consecrated warriors. I have called my elite warriors to carry out my anger, those who rejoice in my triumph. The noise of a horde is heard on the mountains, like the noise of many people, like the uproar of the kingdoms of the nations who are massing together. The Lord of armies is mustering an army for war. They come from a faraway country, from the ends of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his wrath come to destroy the whole land. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come like destruction from the Almighty. Therefore all hands will hang limp and every heart will melt. They will be terrified. Pain will overcome them. They will be in pain like a woman in labor. They will look at each other in shock. Their faces are flushed.
All right, how about 9 through 13? I think it's talking about Babylon specifically. And this is before Babylon was a world power. Isaiah's prophesying about Babylon, what's going to happen. But like in many Old Testament prophecies, I think you can kind of see Judgment Day here a little bit too, as you think. This is talking about Babylon's judgment, but the world's judgment. How about 9 through 13? Randy's got that?
Look, the day of the Lord is coming, a cruel day, with wrath and fierce anger, a day to make the land desolate, a day to destroy its sinners there. For the stars of the sky and its constellations will not give their light. The sun will be darkened as it rises, and the moon will give no light. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their guilt. I will put an end to the arrogance of the insolent, and I will humble the pride of the ruthless. I will make people rarer than fine gold, and mankind scarcer than the gold of Ophir. Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken off its foundation at the wrath of the Lord of armies in the day of his fierce anger.
I saw some AI, we can have our different thoughts on AI, but it was an AI rendering of the book of Revelation, and it was one of the sections of Revelation kind of talking about Judgment Day, and it was basically, it was a young woman who was what sort of atheist is the word I'm looking for, and Judgment Day comes, and it kind of, talk about putting the fear of God into you, right? it takes all this kind of stuff and like there's fire and everything around and there's God on the throne and here's her. And she's trying to come up with all these excuses and all this, and but, and I did that. Sorry about it, but wait, depart. But you can't do that. You're a guy, you love people. I don't know who you are. Kind of like today, I don't know you. The door shut. And you watch that, you're like, oh my, wow, that's going to be horrible. Talk about people crying and running and this is the side of God we don't like to talk about, his judgment and his, at the end of the day, you're either on the right side or wrong side of it. I talk about being saved from something. You're not saved unless there's something to be saved from. And I just had a greater appreciation for how you don't want anyone to have to experience that, right? And, yeah, I don't know how that's all gonna look when the day comes, but in AI's mind, you put all that evidence together and it says, here's what the result will be for the person who doesn't believe in Jesus, and it is not a pleasant video to watch. The begging and the crying and the, keep going, 14 through 18.
Like a hunted gazelle, like sheep without a shepherd, each of them will turn to his own people, and everyone will flee to his own land. Everyone who is caught will be run through. Everyone who is captured will fall by the sword. Their infants will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be looted, and their wives will be raped. See, I will stir up against them the needies, who have no use for silver, who do not delight even in gold. Their bows will strike down the young, and they will have no pity on newborn infants. There will be no compassion in their eyes for children.
Okay, so again, it was the Assyrians. That's Isaiah was living during the time of the Assyrians. Babylonians were next. Isaiah's talking about the downfall of Babylon one day. Remember, the Babylonians were going to be the one who did what to Israel or Judah? How do they fit in the whole timeline? They were the ones who destroyed the temple. They were the ones who shipped them all off into captivity. Books like Ezekiel, he's working over in Babylon. And then the Medes, you said, they were next. So Xerxes, who we're talking about, Esther, he's part of the Medes and Persians thing, Susa and that whole. So if this helps tell you how horrible the Medes and Persians were, what Randy just said, they're going to pillage you, they're going to rape your wives, they're going to kill your infants, they're going to, they're not nice people either. So here's what's going to come for you one day, Babylon. Last part, 19 through the end. If you want to keep going, Randy, or someone, you're doing great, Randy, if you want to keep going.
Babylon is the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride. But it will be just like the day when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited again, nor will anyone live in it from generation to generation. No Arab will pitch his tent there, no shepherd will rest his flocks there. Instead, wild animals from the desert will rest there. The houses will be full of wild dogs. Ostriches will nest there, and wild goats will frolic. Hyenas will howl in its fortresses, and jackals in the luxurious palaces. Its time is near, and its days will not be prolonged.
Okay, so Babylon, and what a comfort for Israel too, as they're one day when they're going to be going through this, and Jerusalem's destroyed and the temple's knocked down, and Ezekiel's over there prophesying. Remember what God said through Isaiah about Babylon. That the day will come for them. The day will come when they're knocked off their high horse too.
May I ask why the EHV said ostriches?
Yeah, what did the
NIV
NIV
says
say?
owls?
Yeah, that's one that,
I mean, that's not even close.
right, not even close, right? I remember talking about that, and there are some words in Hebrew where they're just kind of like, could be this or that. In some contexts, it's, yeah, those birds are totally different. The fish that swallowed Jonah is just called a great fish. We always think of it as a whale, right? It's something big enough to swallow a human being. Was it a whale? Was it some kind of, it was some fish that doesn't exist anymore that we don't have any idea. But yeah, an ostrich and an owl are two. I'm trying to think of, there's some other animals where it's like that with some of the like precious stones too, where you'll see in some translations it says, and you think, boy, in our language those two are totally different things. This is blue and this is green, but I wish I had a better
Interesting.
answer. But yeah, there's some animals like that where as you look through the list of clean and unclean foods in Leviticus, you get that too, where we think of an owl, we think of this little guy hooting in a tree, but
Yeah.
apparently in their mind, they might have thought of something a little bigger.
We heard those up north, right? Who cooks for you? We heard that all the time.
We took, to Steph's disdain from a recent sermon, when the nephews were here, we went to the Marshfield Zoo. She doesn't love zoos. But anyway, we did it for the kids, and they had a little owl. One of the little exhibits is an owl, and those are really creepy looking when you see them up close. Like, where is the thing? And it was up there in the tree, just,
The eyes are staring.
and it's like blends in, right? Like, you couldn't talk about the camouflage, and it's just staring at you. Like, ooh, you wonder God's creation, right? That just makes you appreciate how unique. Like, how do you think that came from the same thing as that? There's no way that this all came from one source. Okay, so our point here, right? The King of Kings. I don't care how powerful Babylon was, how powerful Xerxes was, Rome, anything. Don't put your trust in princes and kings, presidents. They can't save. Only the Lord can save. So, human kings often do their best to terrify their subjects into obedience and submission. Ancient kings sometimes were thought of as gods, as divine. The true King of Kings takes a different approach. Let's just kind of page through Matthew 21 and 26, 27. Nothing here is going to be surprising, but just a reminder. Matthew 21, the story of Palm Sunday. Maybe we will do, how about 4 and 5? Matthew 21, 4 and 5? Okay.
This took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, see, your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey.
Yeah, everyone laying out their cloaks, got the palm branches, the kids shouting out. And we said this in their mind. They're so excited. Here he comes. The king's in town. Zechariah's being fulfilled. He's going to do what the Messiah is supposed to do. And all the excitement of Palm Sunday starts to get the air let out of it as the week goes on. And by Friday, the thing has been totally deflated. That this king is not like the king we expected him to be.
Did the people even know who this person was? Or were they just doing it because everybody else was?
In
cheering
the,
him?
I think,
Yeah.
well, I think word of him, so this is like a month after the whole Lazarus being raised from the dead story. I think people knew, I'm sure there were some in the crowd, because remember, people were in town from all over because it was Passover. I'm sure there were some in the crowd who were just going along with, okay, what are we doing? Okay. But I would guess the majority, this Jesus is well known by this point. They know his words, they know his works, they know his miracles. The Lazarus thing would have had to have knocked people's socks off. And now it's Passover and all the stuff about Passover in their head and the Messiah, and they were doing the math that this week's going to be the week where judgment finally comes on Rome. And the point of this week is judgment on the devil. And this has nothing to do with Rome. This has everything to do with your eternal king. So different than earthly kings. How about 26 through 28? That, Wendy.
While they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples. He said, take, eat, this is my body. Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. For this is my blood of the New Testament, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins.
Okay. As much as, he could have on that night handed out swords and handed out, all right, today's the day, rebellion, we're coming, we're going to conquer Rome. What does he give them? Here's my body, here's my blood, forgiveness. These are the weapons of the gospel. This is the stuff of the kingdom of God here. This is what really matters. And then the sign in chapter 27, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. And how we know that was distasteful to his enemies. Well, you should say he claimed to be King of the Jews. And Pilate's famous answer, what I have written, I have written. I'm done with you people, I'm done arguing with you. But there's so much truth in that sign. This is the Messiah, this is the King of the Jews. And how you don't see it, but this is what the king came to do. What's happening up there is exactly why king came into the world in the first place. Unlike all the earthly kings who couldn't imagine being up there thinking that's going to save it. All right, and then finally, second article of the Creed speaks about Jesus, who he is, what he's done. Familiar words, I would think, for many. I believe Jesus Christ, true God, begotten of the Father from eternity, and also true man, born of the Virgin Mary, is my Lord, who has redeemed me, a lost and condemned creature, is the way I learned it. Purchased on me for all sins from death, from the power of the devil, not with gold or silver, but with his holy precious blood, with his innocent suffering and death. And all this he did that I may be his own, live under him in his kingdom, and serve him in everlasting righteousness, innocence, and blessedness, just as he has risen from the dead, lives and reigns to all eternity. This is most certainly true. What good news that is, right? I'll just answer 73. To know that this is the king who's on your side, to know that when he makes decisions, he makes them in your best interest, to know that he is controlling the events of this world for the good of his church, to know that when the end comes, we have no reason to fear, as we said in the sermon today, because he's already been through it, he's already went down that road, and he came out of it, and so will we one day. What a Savior we have. And that is lesson 6. The intrigue and drama continues next week. We get into the banquet a little bit.
But what happened to Haman?
Oh, yeah. I think next week we'll probably put these next 2 together. We'll do 7, 8, maybe I'll look and see how long, maybe even 9 we can fit in there. Kind of keep it clicking a little bit. A lot of these questions aren't real hard. Keep moving along. Anything else this morning? Voters meeting at noon. We'll probably eat around 11:45. Nothing too much earth-shattering on the agenda, I don't think. If you haven't, or if you don't plan on coming, at the very least, grab a packet. We can kind of look at the budget and see what's happening in the church. Is there anything big going on? Yeah, so I just got some of that Quick Trip pre-made stuff. Steph's gonna get some buns and chips today. People have been griping about pizza too much. You guys have pizza. Fine, we'll do sloppy joes. People to be mad about the meal. We were gonna get those sandwiches from.
Ungrateful.
We were talking about this on the plane yesterday. I said, well, why don't we do those sandwiches from Cops? But they're like all bread. You know that big.
Yeah.
It's like this thick,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
bread, and then a little bit of meat in the middle. I see why they only charge you $8 for that, or whatever. It's like $8 worth of bread.
There's no lunch meat.
So why don't we do? So sloppy joes are pretty good. So that's the plan. Steph will cook it up, which means put it in the crock pot.
That's my kind of cooking.
Can you cook this, honey? Sure, I
Yeah.
can turn on the crock pot.
That is a lot of work. You have to place the crock pot up onto the counter.
Right.
That's a lot of work.
Open all those packages with the knife.
Yes.
Okay, oof, slaving away in the kitchen there.
Plop it in there.
All right, well, let's close. Heavenly Father, thank you for another day of grace. Thank you for your word in Luke this morning, the reminder of how narrow the path to heaven is, how narrow the door to heaven is, and how we know through the Holy Spirit that it is through you and you alone. As we said here today in the Bible study, you are a king who is unlike other kings, and you come to rule not by force, but you rule through the power of the gospel, and that door is open to anyone who would like to enter. And by grace, we're there. By grace, we've come to know you and what your blood has done. And for that reason, we have no need to fear things now and things at the end. But when you come, that door will be shut and judgment will happen. So use that as another reason to motivate us to not only know the gospel for ourselves, but live the gospel, love our neighbor, and perhaps get an opportunity to share that good news with someone who will be on the wrong side of it if the faith is not there the way it is there for us. And we ask you to help us plant seeds and use our words and works to bring people to you, Jesus, so they can come to the Father through the work of the Spirit. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone, thank you for sticking around.